Boys off to school and work, waiting for some fun while my boss acts like a jerk. Pro show afternoons, midnight sketch can't come too soon. Hit up afternoon and sketch can't come too soon. But at night I'm filled with dread. I know just what I'll do instead. Come on and follow me. It's time you see for Lorn and Apollo. Time to laugh and learn. Come feel the burn of what the fandom was. What random fun doesn't escape. Isn't it great? Late night with Lorn and Apollo.
Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night. I keep forgetting what night it is, but we're all here with you. You're here with us. I have my co-host Kevin Apollo here. We're going to be doing a night tonight about influential shows of the 90s. This was Kevin's concept, and I love it because, well, actually, I'll let you frame it because this is your idea. So you frame what we're talking about tonight, what it applies to today's programming, and how we're going to be tackling the whole thing.
Sure. So I will influential shows of the 90s, and not just the hits, but the bombs too, and their impact on whether it be a pop culture moment. So, case in point, everybody singing the Friends theme song. That guy I always point out that show caught fire and it was about to be canceled. Or to things like the infamous Cop Rock, which was an experiment that will probably never ever be replicated. To things like Ally McBeal. It just had to capture the cultural zeitgeist, change how shows were either made or produced, and just had some kind of impact on TV. Like in case in point, Frasier becoming the golden standard for spinoffs, things like that.
Yeah, and what I like about this is the way that you framed the pitch was also comparing and contrasting the shows that were big hits from the 90s compared to the direct that we're getting today. And what we think either those shows influenced in what we're getting today or what the shows of today are missing that prevent them from being the kind of hits that these were. And so hopefully it'll be a good conversation. I think most of you out there in the audience were probably watching some of these shows in the 90s. And in fact, at least one of the shows is still ongoing today. So, there's some interesting things to talk about there. I do have a programming note that I want to get to that I should have mentioned on our last show, and I had a note to myself to be sure to mention it, and then I completely forgot, so I feel bad about it. I want to make sure everybody knows that the Lorn and the Apollo show is going to be moving from the WDW Pro channel to that pod place, starting, I believe the first one is going to be on the 1st of, no, it's actually not the 1st of, yes, it is. It is the 1st of May. It'll be the 1st of May. That is a Friday. So that will be our first show of the Lorn and the Apollo show on that pod place. So make sure that if you regularly view us, that you're going there after that point. Make sure that you're subbed over there and of course, ring the notification bell, watch our old videos, comment, all of the stuff that helps engagement. There's going to be some new content coming to that pod place here real quick too. I had some conversations with Pro about that tonight. We're gradually introducing more of our classic and new content onto there. So hopefully you guys will have something new there each day. And I hope that we'll see you there. We do have, to start off, our first super chat of the evening from Juliet for £2 sterling with the traditional morning late night live with Lorn and the Apollo in chat. Good to see you out there, Juliet. Thanks for being here with us. Now that that's all out of the way, what have you been up to this week?
Nothing. I had to just kind of pack some things up and get to the resort. So I'm here in beautiful Fontana Village, North Carolina. Got a few things just going for the summer and wanted to check in my J1s, and it's been a gosh, it's only Tuesday, huh?
It's been a week. It feels like we should be later in the week.
No, but it's been a week. and it's only Tuesday.
Yeah, I have a normal production schedule that I go through, but I tried to get ahead this week and do things that I would normally do later in the week yesterday, and it's completely thrown off my internal chronometer because I now think it's Thursday, and I feel like I shouldn't even be here tonight. I was actually making out my list of tasks to do tomorrow and the next day and everything, and I had my days completely off, so I've had to restructure everything I got to do for the rest of the week. I do see Juliet asking out there, will we be able to have super chats and memberships? Actually, I'm not 100% sure on that to start with. I think some of that is determined by the number of subscribers and engagement that we have on the channel, and I'm not sure if we've hit those thresholds yet. So that's another reason to get over there, make sure that you're subscribed, that you've rung the notification bell, that you have everything set to go there. That will help us get to where we can do all of that kind of content as well. I know that there are some additional plans, but I don't want to talk about those yet because I don't have all of that framework down in my head yet. Just be aware that changes are coming and we don't want to lose any of you guys. So if you want to keep catching the stream, make sure that you're aware that we are going to be doing it over there on that pod place. Our first story for tonight is kind of an interesting one. Netflix sees stock drop after Warner Brothers Discovery deal falls through. This from Trevor Denning over at that Park Place. The aftershocks of Netflix is stepping away from the bidding war for Warner Brothers Discovery are beginning to ripple through Wall Street. On Friday, Netflix stock saw a drop of around 10%, despite posting results that slightly exceeded expectations during its Thursday Q1 earnings call. At first glance, the numbers suggested stability, yet investor reaction reveals uncertainty about where the company goes next. The reasons for the Netflix stock drop are multifaceted. The streaming giant projected softer than expected growth for the second quarter, which may signal slowing momentum. At the same time, Netflix is maintaining its full-year forecast even after implementing price increases, raising questions about how much those hikes will translate into sustained revenue growth. Uncertainty around these factors can contribute to investor hesitation. Adding to the tension is a lack of clear direction around Netflix's evolving strategy. As the entertainment industry moves towards consolidation through mergers that extend content libraries, distribution power, and global reach, Netflix remains largely independent. So far, it has relied on its existing infrastructure and content engine to drive growth. While that independence has long been a strength, the recent stock drop suggests some investors are beginning to question whether it could become a limitation. The company's decision to exit negotiations for a potential acquisition of Warner Brothers Discovery was initially interpreted by some as financial discipline. Some could argue it stood in sharp contrast to David Ellison's win-at-all-costs measures at Paramount Skydance in securing the final bid. Yet returning to a traditional model in an evolving media landscape carries with it potential isolation in an industry that's getting bigger and more interconnected. There's also been a shift in how Netflix communicates its performance. The company has moved away from regularly reporting subscriber numbers, once its most closely watched metric. While this aligns with a broader emphasis on revenue and engagement, it removes a familiar benchmark that investors have long used to gauge growth. In its place is a less transparent narrative that may require greater trust in management's long-term vision. Another factor for the Netflix stock drop is a shift in leadership. During the earnings call, it was announced that Netflix co-founder Reed Hastings will not stand for re-election to the board of directors. After decades of influence, his departure marks a transition point for the company. While Netflix's current leadership team remains experienced, any change at the top can invite additional scrutiny, especially at a time when strategic clarity is already under discussion. None of this suggests that Netflix is in immediate trouble. The company remains financially strong, globally dominant, and deeply embedded in the streaming ecosystem. But the story around Netflix may be shifting. It's no longer just about whether it can grow, it's about how. For Wall Street, that distinction matters. Strong earnings can support confidence in the short term, but long-term valuation depends on a clear and compelling path forward. Right now, that path appears less defined than it once did, and until Netflix offers a clearer vision of what comes next, market uncertainty may continue to shape its trajectory. So, when I was first reading this story, I was surprised about the stock drop, but the more I thought about it, the more I think it's making sense. I think Netflix thought that a number of its rival streaming services would have been vanquished by now. And while it's still pretty much at the top, behind only YouTube, I think there is a question now of if all of the studios keep their content within their own lane, if they're not licensing it out, they're going to have to continue to produce original content or scrounge content from elsewhere that may be considered mid or lower tier. And I think that's driving some uncertainty there. You also have, I think, what looks like the start potentially of a better theatrical season this year. I'm seeing more people talk about greater engagement at the theaters, which I think is a positive. And so I think this is leading to some question marks because they didn't get Warner Brothers. Maybe they think they're going to be left behind by theatrical. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I also think that this is potentially it was kind of a wake up call for a lot of people. I think you know, yes, so there's no doubt that when streaming finally decides to finish imploding, because we're at the beginning of the implosion, but when it finally hits, yes, Netflix will be one of the last ones standing. But I think we're starting to see people realize that streaming's been kind of destructive, for television, for movies.
Kinda.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, look at it like this. And it didn't get much news, but Universal, which really kind of carried the torch for first run syndication, has no first run syndication anymore. Not even daytime TV syndication. It's just there. So now, if the big studios are hoarding their content or only willing to share with each other, where's Netflix going to go? Because they're not going to get the major movies without paying a major price tag. And now there's no syndication to fill the catalog. What do you do? What do you do? The other part too is, well, how do you grow? Because people are already sick and tired of paying the prices for their individual streaming services. Like, I just realized I happened to be looking at my phone when my charge for Peacock went through. And now that there is no WWE content on Peacock, I'm like, what am I paying for?
Well, here's another example is that um, I was watching the other day Gladiator because we're going to be covering it for the genre guys here. We're going to be recording this weekend. And they had the extended edition, which was 2 hours and 30 minutes, I think is the runtime, something like that. Renting it was $4.35 on Amazon Prime. They had a special deal where you could buy it for something like $5.60, something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. But when I was looking at that, the logical decision would be buy the movie if you like the movie. But there's another story that I saw on YouTube just the other day. I haven't dug into it at all yet, but apparently they had some kind of a game streaming service on Amazon that you paid for, and you bought games in your library that they're shutting down and saying they're not offering any refunds. And when you consider that, and when you also consider that it used to be that Amazon Prime got you free movies in their library and 2 day shipping, neither of which is offered anymore, and it's almost $5 a rental. It's like, why do I want this? And so I guess a corollary question here is that I'm hearing more and more younger people as they get into retro stuff, which is kind of interesting to me, are
Mhm.
taking a good hard look at physical media again. I think because they recognize the limitations of the total rental system. And so I'm still carrying the flag for a revival of the physical media market.
Yeah.
Do
I
you
think
think it's plausible?
I think it's high. I think it's likely. Hey, listen, look at Anthem. Now, yes, fine. Anthem did not blow up a single skirt when it came up when it came out, but it was kind of audacious for what they wanted to do. Its biggest crime was that the game didn't know what it wanted to be, and that's just EA's fault for trying to make Bioware do too many things. But if you owned the physical copy, like we're talking original code on disc, When they shut down that server, that disk does not work anymore.
Yep.
And so I have a major problem with that. So now it's not just because it's, and I get it, like oh God, Sony has been very slowly programming you to to not to be okay with not actually owning the thing you think you just purchased. And the Nintendo game card key card thing just accidentally pulled the band-aid off without the wound being sealed yet. So people reacted very poorly. But now there's a whole other component to this where people are actually buying things thinking that they own it. They don't. Or if you do own it, you don't have it until you have it only until someone says you don't get to have it anymore. And that is massively problematic. And I think it's going to start trickling its way in the stream, because again, something like Gladiator, why does it even cost that much to rent it? The movie is decades old at this point. And it's weird to say that because we're talking about Gladiator, but at the end of the day, we're talking about why. Listen, Terminator. There's a couple of things I was looking at. I'm like, Commando. I said Commando's a movie that I watch almost once a month, every month. But if you log into the wrong streaming service at the wrong time, yeah, they want like $5 to $10 to rent it or buy it. And why? For almost 40-year-old movie, it's stupid.
One of the other things that was cool is that back when DVDs became a thing, besides the visual clarity that you were getting over something like VHS, one of the major selling points was all of the extras that they put on the disc. You usually got trailers, behind-the-scenes documentaries, director commentary, all of that stuff. And I think the studios looked at that as, gosh, this is expensive to produce. We don't want to do that anymore because it's just adding costs onto the production. But for film aficionados, you will love that stuff. So I really hope. Go ahead.
They rewarded you for collecting. For if you may have purchased this thing 3 times, and that doesn't include if you happen to have been a Laserdisc person.
Yeah, and there was nothing that would prevent me. It's like, gosh, if you put out a new version that has better features or alternate cuts, I would do that too. It's like a great example, one that I would love to do for the genre guys someday, is Payback, where you had the theatrical release and then you had the director's cut, and there's a whole bunch of backstory behind all of the fraught production of Payback. This is one of the rare cases where I actually prefer the theatrical cut. But I love having both in my collection because they're very different animals.
Oh, did I freeze?
No, I was just waiting for a counterpoint. That's all.
No. I think you nailed it. So to bring it back home, I think we're starting to see the genesis of people realizing that streaming worked when it was this niche, where it was this niche thing that it was accoutrement, it was supplementary, as opposed to now it's replaced everything, and now it's kind of out of control. And there is no growth mechanism for Netflix in reality. How long? Well, actually, it's already started to happen. You're seeing people go back to cable TV.
That's the thing. I think part of the drive to streaming was that it allowed the consumer to feel like, I'm getting away with something. I'm cutting the cord. I'm giving the finger to the cable company, and look at me. I'm getting away with this. You never actually get away with it. You're going to be charged one way or another. And one thing that I think seemed more convenient, I think the idea that the consumer had in mind is that they just wanted ad hoc. I want to be able to pick and choose what I want so that I can get just the stuff I want. So I'm not paying for all of these packages and things I don't want. But all the streamers are going to do is yes, they're going to let you select what you want to buy, but they're still going to price it at roughly the same amount so that they're still making the money. You're not necessarily coming out ahead.
Listen, when everything was $5.99 to $9.99, sure, it made sense. Get your Netflix, get your Hulu, get your Disney, get your whatever the whatever the HBO was called at the time, and you could probably have five different streaming services, not including the fast TV model ones that have the commercials. You could have five prestige streaming services and more or less have everything that you would want to watch anyway. Now, because the price increases nonstop, and they want to punish you for password sharing, after they encouraged it, the you're spending more than you ever would have spent on cable, and sometimes for less options. Again, like you go put it on Netflix, and you scroll through something that is outside of the mega blockbuster. It's a bunch of
Yep.
so you're already seeing Netflix kind of be rough to navigate now. What's it going to look like in 5 years when everybody realizes that in order for them to try to even want to pretend to stay in the game, that they can't give Netflix access to their stuff.
Well, I think this is another reason why they're a little skittish too, and may have been part of what led to that stock drop is with Reed Hastings leaving. It does invite a question of how much of Netflix's success has been because the original founder was there. The strategic vision is always a question. And usually, when there's a leadership change, you've got somebody who's going to want to make their mark and change things up. And usually, that means they're going to try and find a way to bump up profits. And usually, that means either cutting services or charging more or both, which is never great for the consumer.
Well, we'll see. I think this is an opportunity for Netflix, frankly. Netflix, part of the reason why Netflix struggles is it chose its side in the culture war, and has been very unabashed about it. The up to and including making decisions that were to its peril, during the DEI craze, where they just made some irrational choices that just they were forced them to hemorrhage money. But like I was just looking at I think it was on That Park Place. Well, I don't remember who wrote the article, but Kevin Sorbo talking about going to a Netflix meeting, and then them telling him that they understand there's an audience for faith-based content, but they don't understand these people, and they think it's problematic for their platform. But Cuties was okay and needed to be defended. So we've seen like that mentality it's been better hidden, but it still permeates the vast majority of Netflix's content. So, hey, is a change in leadership that bad? If someone's going to come and go, we really need to be a lot more universal, especially when it comes to courting parents.
Yep, agree. We do have some super chats that have come in. I'm going to hold off on them because they are individual lists for the influential shows of the 90s that the audience has picked. And so we'll get to those when we get to that part of the discussion. Hang in there, guys. I haven't forgotten you. Our next story is Jessica Chastain's The Savant, finally releasing on Apple TV in July after assumed Charlie Kirk postponement. I'm surprised they're releasing this thing.
I know they should have pulled his dazzle off and just took the tax credit.
A shelved show may be coming to TV screens of people who subscribe to Apple TV, after all. Variety's Mark Malkin exclusively reports that Apple is going to release The Savant in July. Malkin talked to the series star Jessica Chastain on the red carpet at the Breakthrough Prize ceremony, which honors achievements in scientific advancement, and for which Chastain was a presenter. Chastain told Malkin that while she was unsure of the show's fate following its postponement, she can now say, "We're gonna see it." Malkin then checked with sources, who told him Apple is planning to release The Savant in July. The Savant was pulled from Apple TV's release schedule on September 25th of last year, one day before it was set to premiere. And while no official reason was given, most assume it was a reaction to the slaying of Charlie Kirk on September 10th. The Savant is about a woman with the uncanny ability to identify dangerous people online and uses her skills for the FBI to prevent acts of domestic terror from occurring. It is taken as a given that the show would focus exclusively on terror coming from the right side of the political spectrum, which presumably Apple believed may not play as well following one of the country's most prominent conservative voices having his life taken. It also followed a series of political attacks on figures to the right. An ABC affiliate station in Sacramento was fired upon with a note of the suspect's vehicle claiming that members of the Trump administration would be next. A country club in Maine was attacked by a man shouting a political slogan associated with the left. A Fox News van was almost blown up in Salt Lake City, and the suspects had anti-Trump signs outside their alleged home. And an ice facility in Texas was fired upon. These incidents all took place before Apple pulled the Savant. After its trailer was released, The Savant, which is based on a true story about a woman who was the basis for the character Chastain plays, whose nickname in real life was The Savant, became a meme, with a screenshot of Chastain in character looking at her computer screen and making disconnected comments about the online account she observed. It seemed destined to be divisive no matter what happened, but the tragedies leading up to it made its original release date the worst timing possible. Chastain disagreed with the decision and shared her opinion in an Instagram message, citing examples of hurt figures on both sides to show why people could benefit from watching the show. She ended her message by saying she was hopeful that the show would eventually air. And then there's her post that she had put at the time there. Chastain and the viewers awaiting the show will now get their wish when The Savant premieres on Apple TV in July, if all goes according to Apple's plan. Whether there's enough distance from Charlie Kirk's slaying to keep audience from making a connection remains to be seen, although considering the early responses and the meme, it's possible the show would never have avoided controversy. So, I don't know, man. I know when you invest in something, you want to get a return on your investment, but I don't know how anybody could think this would be a good idea.
You mean to tell me that a show with Jessica Chastain using her white supremacist powers, the powers of detection, all white supremacists is imminent. I don't, what's happening? I get this is allegedly supposed to be a true story, but we all know what's going to happen here. You know, it's going to be some disenfranchised young man who happens to be right-leaning is going to go do acts of terror because of probably hatred for brown people. It's everybody's sick of this crap. No one wants to see it. It was not a good trailer when the trailer released last year, which is why it was already memeable. Sometimes it's just best to move on. But I'm excited because it just gives us something to talk about.
I guess it'll be another thing in a long list of ill-advised releases. I guess the only other question I would have is, do we think there's actually an audience for this? Will you get people that are watching it just out of curiosity, or are there people that are actually waiting for this thing?
I think the people who watch MSNBC all day long are the people who will watch this.
Okay. Do you think they will make any reference to it being pulled? Do you think that they will try and act some kind of an ad campaign where they claim that it was being suppressed? Or how are they going to try and drum up eyeballs for this thing?
I think if they're smart, they just put it out because there are too many people who do remember why this was pulled. You know, in spite of the media circus on all sides that involve this particular event, I don't think that anybody dares want to have to try to, be the only man on the field when you go to invoke it. So just let it slide under the radar, and just don't talk about it, and it'll come and go faster, than a flash of lightning. And now we're on to the next ill-advised television show that never should have been made.
Yep. I do see Tennille saying that mine wasn't a list. I didn't see a notification for yours when I was talking about that, but I do see yours back here now, so we'll get to it. Tennille the 10th for 5. I have my important Steam games kept backed up on a separate hard drive. App manifest is read-only, and the date perpetually locked for that very reason. And I think that's a wise policy. I'd also advocate for GOG because they let you pretty much download everything and keep it separate. It's not got the DRM that you typically see on other platforms. So I actually like supporting both stores. Our next story up. Rebel Wilson branded a bully as defamation trial begins. And I kind of wanted to hold this one for Trish because this feels like it's in the same line as what's been going on with Baldoni and Lively. But I know you enjoy girl gossip too. So here we go. Legal representatives for an actress suing Rebel Wilson for defamation described the star as a bully in an Australian court. Charlotte McInnes, the 25-year-old lead in Wilson's directorial debut, The Deb, alleges that Wilson used her large Instagram following to falsely portray her as a victim. What may have begun as an effort to create a feel-good, crowd-pleasing film has since evolved into a sprawling dispute playing out across Australia, Los Angeles, and online. According to court documents, between September 2024 and May 2025, Rebel Wilson published a series of posts suggesting that Charlotte McInnes had privately complained about an unwanted advance by producer Amanda Ghost. The posts allegedly implied that McInnes later changed her account to secure further opportunities, an allegation she denies, maintaining she never made such a complaint to Wilson. Sue Crisantho, who leads McInnes' legal team, told the court that Miss Wilson was not a whistleblower seeking to protect a young actress, instead describing Wilson as a bully who slagged her client online. Crisantho argued that Wilson sought to use McInnes as leverage in her ongoing legal disputes with Ghost. Earlier this year, Wilson accused producers Amanda Ghost, Gregor Cameron, and Vince Holden of intimidation and embezzlement. A Los Angeles judge, Thomas Long, dismissed several of those claims. Further complicating matters, a leaked recording obtained by The Hollywood Reporter suggested that a crisis PR team representing Wilson discussed plans to launch a smear campaign against Ghost. The sprawling trans-Pacific legal battle surrounding the Deb is also drawing an online audience. The defamation suit filed by Charlotte McInnes is expected to run for 9 days and is being live-streamed on YouTube. Rebel Wilson denies the defamation allegations. Details of her full defense were not disclosed on the opening day, though her earlier filings indicate she maintained she acted on genuine concerns raised during filming. Reports have also surfaced that Wilson secured defamation insurance prior to posting, an element McInnes' legal team has pointed to as evidence of premeditation. The Deb, Wilson's feature directorial debut, was originally slated for high-profile festival premieres before the disputes escalated. Production wrapped in 2023, with a premiere planned for the 2024 Toronto Film Festival. Deadline reports that Wilson took her allegations public out of concern the film might not be screened. At the time, she posted a video to Instagram accusing the producers of inappropriate behavior towards the lead actress, setting the stage for the current defamation lawsuit. As the case unfolds, the central question extends beyond conflicting accounts to the power of public narrative. The bully label, invoked by Charlotte McInnes' legal team, has already begun to shape perceptions of Rebel Wilson as much as the underlying facts. With testimony still to come, the trial will test not only the truth of the claims, but also the consequences of airing allegations in the digital arena. Its outcome may influence how disputes in the entertainment industry and beyond are fought, framed, and judged in the public eye. Have you been following this at all?
I have been. So what I found, just going back to the Me Too debacle, and even a little before that, because we like to pretend like men weren't being fired and accused for no reason before that all started. I remember having a talk with I probably shouldn't say where we were, but we were doing an executive protection gig with my dad, and we were talking to someone who works at a major studio. We were talking about all the extra precautions that had to be in place because of the issues with sexual harassment. And at that point, there was no end in sight, but people on the inside were kind of in the know. If you were competent and male, and probably white, you were probably going to be in trouble. And the end result of that was the people were unwilling to start taking female interns. So now young women were missing out because they were terrified of being accused 20, 30 years later. And then while we were talking, it's like, well, this probably doesn't end until you start seeing women start being accused, not by men but by other women. That means we crossed the Rubicon. And
It
and then,
goes back to that believe all women narrative. It's like if two women have a differing story, which one are we supposed to believe?
exactly. So it's like it shatters the believe all women thing, which means they're gonna have to make this go away. I feel a little bad for Rebel Wilson in the sense that she has been punished for getting healthy. Right? She lost weight and they stopped putting her in movies. But that doesn't mean you hire a crisis team to go lie about someone. Now, fine. Do we need to figure out, was she aware of what this team intended to do, or was she, or is she telling the truth? You'll never really know. But at the same time, it's like, well, once this is all said and done, we're really going to have an honest conversation about all the damage that's been done over the last 8 to 10 years. Because if this was a man, this wouldn't be happening. This guy would have been flamed and toasted, and only by virtue of this tape coming out, and it most likely would have, if the Hollywood Reporter had it, they wouldn't have let you know they had it for probably another 5 years.
They will never discuss the damage that was done over the last 8 to 10 years. I think there will become a tacit understanding that we cannot weaponize this the way that we've been weaponizing it because it's now affecting us. And so there will be a sort of an unspoken armistice, I expect. But I don't think that they'll ever admit that perhaps we took this too far and some innocent people have been caught in the crossfire. How far away do you think we are from that? I think it's going to take 2 or 3 more of these cases.
I think we're silently in the middle of it because there is a big competency problem, and I'm hearing more and more discussions about the difference between male female leadership. The energy has been unbalanced. And there is no more that male we don't hold grudges, we just keep it moving energy. So there are now major issues that exist in companies that did not exist. Now they're never going to tell you why this problem exists, but we all know why the problem exists. So and now no one knows how to fix it. So we're kind of stuck. And I think this is I'm sorry. The only reason we know this tape exists is because a woman accused another woman, and they were like, "Oh my God, this happened way sooner than it was supposed to." And guess what? It's gonna be a problem because I've worked with many brilliant women in the workplace. However, when a female decides that she does not like another female, she will make that person's life a living hell and recruit an army to do her bidding.
Or a male, for that matter.
Yes, or especially a male. So the era of the female harassment suit is coming like a freight train. Or how long before you get some young guy who gets hit on by by a cougar, and it's like, I'm not into this because these young bucks, they don't build them like how we used to be built. We would have just rolled with it. They're sensitive and want to talk about stuff now.
I don't know. I think you're maybe a little more optimistic about the legal system than I am, because I feel like it's going to be tilted against men no matter what, in my opinion. But
Well,
I,
I'm speaking more court of public opinion. Court of
mm,
public opinion, because that's a little, especially too, they never really counted on the new media space and its desire to want to tackle topics that do not get covered in traditional media. Case in point, its most powerful victory probably being the Johnny Depp trial.
now Donovan here is saying Ruby Rose and Katy Perry. Who do you believe? And boy, is that a weird story,
Yeah, that is a
because
weird story.
when I first heard it, I had a reflexive opinion about it. But then it's like it sounds like there's potentially at least some corroborating details. And then it's like, holy cow, what a mess. You know, this is 20 years on, too.
I I am inclined to believe Ruby Rose, and the big reason for that is the fact that you had to go along to get along, and she's a little bit of a finds he on occasion says some dumb things,
Mhm.
but she's also been very open and almost antagonistic to any form of the studio system and and its treatment of people. The She does not like the Hollywood machine. The and it goes beyond them breaking her back, during Batwoman. So I just go, well, that had to come from somewhere. And listen, for all intents and purposes, I do think that she should be a little more famous than what she actually is. She's good looking. She's athletic. Um, I don't
I
think she's
think the issue comes down to her acting ability, though.
yeah, but we've also seen people of significantly less talent go on to do a little bit more. I'm not saying she should be the lead, but I like Kate Beckinsale. We found a way to milk 9,000 awful underworld movies off of her ability to put on pleather pants.
I guess I just see. I always think back to her appearance in the second John Wick. I think it was the second John Wick, and it's like they deliberately made her mute. It's like that kind of says something. I think. Yeah, it's to me. I agree with you. I think she's attractive. I think she wants to be famous, but acting wise, I think she's like the equivalent to me of Billy Zane. It's like I get the same vibe. It's like, oh, that person. So
I always refer to her as the little wooden boy because
yeah,
she's just very stiff. She's very stiff with her acting. But I've also seen her in, your run of the mill, you know, dollar store movie entry, and she wasn't awful. She just
you
wasn't
know,
awful. She wasn't great. She wasn't awful.
I would be up to being proven wrong. I'd like to see her do something that actually worked for me. I just haven't seen that yet. So I guess time will tell. Our next one. Leaked Zelda movie image reveals Link's full outfit and first look at the Master Sword. So there's the promotional art. A newly surfaced image from the upcoming The Legend of Zelda live-action movie is giving fans their clearest look yet at Link, and more importantly, the first apparent look at the Master Sword. The image, which was reportedly shared and quickly deleted by cinematographer Guayla Pados, shows Link in full costume. Unlike earlier set photos, this version of the character includes the iconic green cap that had been missing before, immediately putting some concerns to rest. What stands out right away is how grounded and familiar the outfit looks. Rather than leaning into the brighter, more stylized designs seen in entries like Breath of the Wild, this version of Link appears heavily inspired by the darker, more realistic aesthetic of Twilight Princess. The tunic carries a more rugged texture, the color palette is slightly muted, and there's an added layer of practicality to the design. Notably, Link also appears to be wearing a cape, something that isn't traditionally part of his standard look, but fits the more cinematic live-action interpretation the film seems to be going for. Taken together, it's a design that suggests the filmmakers are aiming for a tone closer to grounded fantasy than high-color adventure. Whether that's the right call will ultimately depend on execution, but visually it aligns with what many fans consider one of the franchise's more mature entries. While Link's updated look is noteworthy, the real talking point here is the weapon he's holding. The image includes what appears to be the Master Sword, one of the most recognizable elements of the franchise. It appears to show an authentic-looking version of the weapon, though the design has not been officially confirmed. That said, it retains the core silhouette fans expect. The proportions, the recognizable guard shape, and the overall structure all point towards a faithful adaptation rather than a complete redesign. And that's important. The Master Sword isn't just another prop, it's a symbol. Any major deviation would have likely sparked immediate backlash. There's still some uncertainty surrounding the image itself. Reports indicate it may resemble concept art more than a finalized prop shot, which raises the possibility that this isn't the exact version of the Master Sword that will appear on screen in the Zelda movie. The fact that it was quickly removed after being posted has only fueled speculation. That leaves two possibilities. Either the image is legitimate and wasn't meant to be in the public yet, or it's an early-stage design that slipped out before final adjustments were made. Either way, it's already done its job, getting fans talking. This live-action The Legend of Zelda film, directed by Wes Ball and produced by Shigeru Miyamoto, recently wrapped filming in New Zealand and is now deep in post-production. With a release date set for May 7, 2027, the project remains one of the most closely watched video game adaptations in development. And if this leak is any indication, the filmmakers may be threading a very specific needle, trying to deliver something that feels grounded and cinematic without losing the identity that made The Legend of Zelda iconic in the first place. The real question now is simple. Is this the final look, or just the first draft that wasn't meant to be seen?
Just you log into your Twitter, send a little message, and then 5 minutes later you're getting a "What did you do?"
See, part of the reason I wanted to talk about this, I'm not really a Legend of Zelda fan. I didn't really get into that franchise. But I understand the importance of staying true to the iconography of the character. And when I saw this story, I immediately thought of the power sword that we're seeing in Masters of the Universe. And how thrilled I was that that is the freaking sword that I saw when I was a kid.
Yes. They didn't pull a Dolph Lundgren one where we changed everything's look.
Yeah, it looks like the animated version, and it looks almost vaguely crystalline in a way. They've done something interesting with the lighting on it that just makes it look. It made me think, I want that sword. I don't care how I get it. I want it.
Yeah. I am very excited that they chose to stay faithful to the look and aesthetic of the games. It would have been very easy to, like you said, we're making something realistic, so we're gonna put him in a traditional knight's garb, or just anything other than just the classic green or blue tunic. But they are holding to their guns, and I think I don't know if we get this without Sonic.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I'm not one of these people who thinks Ugly Sonic was a marketing ploy. I think Ugly Sonic was just an oopsie daisy because the studio didn't understand that people just want to see what they're used to, and now because of that, very similar to how Iron Man told told people it's okay to make comic book movies based off of the comic book script. The We're in a nice place where I can look at the poster for The Legend of Zelda and know it's The Legend of Zelda not by seeing the logo, but by seeing the characters. And I think that's a fun place to be, especially for Nintendo, because one, it's going to just save them a boatload of money in the marketing. It's going to sell itself. It's just going to sell itself. But and then toys. They're going grown men, grown men and children will be fighting in feverish kumite and Target aisles for their for the ability to get a Master Sword. So kudos for Nintendo for getting it right.
in the same vein, what do you feel about the upcoming Mortal Kombat 2?
Dude, I am struggling with Mortal Kombat and with Street Fighter.
Really? See, Street Fighter surprised me. I actually kind of got a little bit excited about it.
The well, so part of it is I'm like, we live in Balrog, for example. I like 50 Cent. I think he is the spirit of petty. I think when the good Lord, made this universe, and he was like, I need you. One day, the embodiment of petty will visit you and show you exactly how you need to do this. And it was 50 Cent. But I also go, in a world where Michael Jai White exists, how is 50 Cent Balrog? Well, not only is Michael Jai White one of the most prolific, proficient fighters on the planet,
True.
he also played Mike Tyson in a celebrated HBO movie. I go, we live in a world where what's his name? Scott Atkins exists. The guy is 6'2", jacked beyond the gills, and good looking. You have actual martial artists who are out here just grinding away in these low budget movies who could have been in these parts, and neither movie has leveraged them. With Mortal Kombat 2, I will at least go. It looks like there's more of a concerted effort to deliver something that resembles the games. Where I get a little annoyed with Mortal Kombat is we are making Mortal Kombat movies after you had roughly 8 years in the games building this super long narrative to re-explain the universe and get it right, and essentially it was handed to them on a silver platter, and they still did the bizarre 90s thing of we can do it better.
Well, that's typical of Hollywood, though. I don't actually know enough about either franchise to comment on how the movies look, which is kind of why I was asking you, because I knew that you would have a better idea than I would about it. The only counterpoint that I would make to you on Street Fighter is, did you see Guile's hair?
Yes. Well, so yes, I go, with Street Fighter, you know what? Bravo. Someone had the stones to deliver the aesthetic of
It's like, I didn't know that you could do that with hair in reality.
Yeah. So yeah, are there some casting choices where I'm like, there are also canonical reasons as to why that person could have been cast, specifically M. Bison. So I'm willing to see. I think, yeah. As long as both movies are fun, I'm okay. I don't know. Yeah. Carl Urban and Shining Cage is fascinating to me, and then everything about Street Fighter is just interesting.
Well, it's my son. I've got a bunch of arcade one-up cabinets out of my garage, and he loves Street Fighter 2. And so I know I'll be going to see that one. It's likely that I'll probably end up seeing Mortal Kombat 2 just because. But I don't really have a stake in them, so it's hard to say. I'm curious. Let's put it that way. They have at least intrigued me enough to say, you know what? On a Saturday, I'd buy a ticket to go see that and eat some popcorn. It was worth it. Next up, we've got Pedro Pascal comment fuels questions about the Mandalorian's future. And I actually kind of disagree with this, but we'll get into it and we'll debate it a bit. As The Mandalorian and Grogu prepares to move from streaming to theaters this May, questions are emerging about the future of the series. A recent comment from Pedro Pascal has fueled speculation that The Mandalorian may not continue as a television show. While the Star Wars series helped launch Disney Plus and had a strong first season, audience enthusiasm appeared to taper over time. Some fans felt that by its third and so far final season, the show had lost focus and shifted in tone. Series creator Jon Favreau has said a fourth season is written. He's also reassured fans that the film is not built from reused ideas in earlier drafts. During promotion for The Mandalorian and Grogu, Pascal and Favreau appeared alongside Sigourney Weaver in an interview with Fandango. Pascal reflected on childhood memories of watching adventure films like Raiders of the Lost Ark. He also said reading the script reminded him of seeing The Goonies for the first time. He noted that The Mandalorian and Grogu operates on a much larger scale than The Goonies, but it was just that feeling of a true adventure with characters that are grounded in real relationships and a visual experience that comes from John's imagination, where I feel like he just gets to go all out on this one, he said. Returning to the series, Pascal added, "We were very happy with it as a series, and I kept to myself that I was like, it's got to be a movie someday. It has to be a movie someday." His wording has led some to interpret the comment as suggesting The Mandalorian as a streaming series may now be in the past. The bigger question on many minds is whether the series will continue in any form. A recent survey conducted by Fandango suggests that enthusiasm for The Mandalorian and Grogu is relatively low. It failed to make the top 10 most anticipated summer films among 5,000 moviegoers, defined as those who had seen one or more films in theaters over the past year. Early box office tracking also projects a domestic opening weekend between $70 and $85 million. That would be historically low for a Star Wars film. It raises broader questions about how the movie may perform across its full theatrical run. If The Mandalorian and Grogu underperforms at the box office, it could signal uncertainty around the future of Pedro Pascal's Din Djarin. Whether The Mandalorian returns as a Disney Plus series or remains a film franchise is still unknown. Disney and Lucasfilm have not publicly indicated the clear direction either way. Pascal's comments could suggest that the television series is concluded, or that the film simply marks the beginning of a new chapter. Ultimately, the future may depend on how audiences respond to The Mandalorian and Grogu once it reaches theaters. Box office performance, critical reception, and viewer interest will likely shape what comes next for the franchise. For now, the story sits in a transitional space between early streaming success, shifting audience enthusiasm, and cinematic expansion, with its next chapter still undecided. So, I sort of take issue with the framing of the way people have been talking about this, because I don't think what Pascal was intending to say was that the fact that they were doing a movie meant that the show was in the past tense. However, from a practical standpoint, I think they have already assured that through what happened with the Gina Carano firing and the third season. I think it poisoned the well. And my feeling for the movie is, I think the movie is going to be better than people are anticipating, but I also think it's just going to be a fun adventure movie that doesn't have a lot of weight. My suspicion is that it is actually going to be attempting to tee up Thrawn. That is my personal belief, and that could give it a bump. But I think most people are going to wait for it to hit streaming before they watch it, so I don't think it's going to do well at the box office. And if that's the case, and if whatever twist they do put in does generate buzz, I don't think it's going to be enough to continue with the production of the series, especially because I'm not convinced Pedro wants to keep doing it.
Yeah, I feel bad for this movie. I do. I feel bad for this movie because I think this movie, much like Solo, is paying the price for Lucasfilm's sins.
Yes.
Right. And also just the timing of it. This movie should have come out way closer to the end of season 3, where they had a little more momentum. But I get it, the internal politics of it all, blah 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 blah. But the movie's coming out right now where Star Wars is struggling to find out what its new place in the cultural zeitgeist is. There is a lot of disinterest, but I think the disinterest is mostly due to just fatigue and not wanting to see bad things happen to the thing you love anymore.
One of the things that I have been asking myself for a while is, as a collector, I really enjoy collecting the art books. I collected the art books for both seasons of The Mandalorian that were out, for Rogue One, I got the art book for Rogue One and Solo. Um, I've got the Andor book on pre-order. They are going to be releasing an art book for The Mandalorian and Grogu, but they did not release one for season 3 of The Mandalorian. And I got
Mm.
curious about that. And when I started digging into it, it turns out that in the art book for The Mandalorian and Grogu, they're going to be including some artwork from The Mandalorian Season 3 and the Book of Boba Fett, because they do have important episodes that involve The Mandalorian that are going to be necessary to understand what goes on in The Mandalorian and Grogu. But it's like the way they're framing this, it's that because they say they're shifting up the way that they do art books, they want them to be not necessarily per season, but that they want to change the format in such a way that maybe they do less frequent releases. And I'm thinking to myself, that's BS.
Yep.
You want to make money. You want to make money. Why would you not release the Mandalorian season 3 art book? And I think, to me, this reinforces just how badly Gina Carano's firing damaged all of their plans. I think the reason season 3 and the Book of Boba Fett ended up the way that they did is because they had an arc planned and that derailed all of it. And I think part of the reason they couldn't release a season 3 art book is because they didn't have art. I think they had to rebuild that season on the fly. And I think the Book of Boba Fett was also impacted. Probably had to have reshoots and a lot of editing. And I think that's especially why the finale probably ended up as badly as it did. So it's just a hunch, but I know if I was a big company, you want to release as much merchandise as you can and make as much money as you can. It is very strange that they did not do a Mando season 3 art book.
Yeah. Yeah, you are 100% correct. I kind of have to wonder, like you said, do we use this movie to key up Thrawn and tease bigger things ahead for the Star Wars universe?
What
And,
I speculated this morning on the Pro Show. I hadn't said this before. This is my speculation. I could be completely wrong.
mhm.
Um, there's a couple things that Favreau said recently that got me to thinking. One is that they wanted to set up the movie in the same way that they set up A New Hope. They wanted to be able to bring in fans who had no familiarity with the TV show and have them be able to watch it and follow along. So it's not going to be a big elaborate plot that requires you to have a whole bunch of foreknowledge. That's why I think they're going for fun adventure. But I think they also have to tee up things in such a way that it can lead you into what the overarching plot is supposed to be. And all of the Mandoverse was supposed to lead to a big confrontation with Thrawn. Well, they botched Thrawn in Ahsoka. So I got to thinking about it. To a casual audience who hasn't watched the TV shows and has no familiarity with the EU, how do you explain Thrawn? And what I got to thinking was, how do you try and introduce the audience to Thrawn, but also fix the fact that they made Thrawn an idiot in Ahsoka? And my thought was, you set up this adventure with the Mandalorian. He's going against the Imperial remnant. He's collecting bounties for the New Republic to try and clean up these Imperial warlords and bring them to justice so that the New Republic can have peace. But if I were Thrawn, what I would be doing is hanging out somewhere in the background, staying quiet, and trying to eliminate my rivals while acquiring their resources. And how would I do that? I would have somebody else do it for me. So my guess is he's feeding intelligence through the Hutts to the New Republic to point out where the warlords are and where they're vulnerable so that the Mandalorian can take them out, and then Thrawn can acquire their resources and troops to build his fleet. And now you've made Thrawn look smart again. And you've also introduced him to the audience. So that's where I think they're going. Could be wrong, but that's my theory.
I'm kind of super into that. I like it.
I have no idea if it's right, but it would lead into Ahsoka season 2 potentially, where I think they have to resolve some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I am not convinced that The Mandalorian is going to continue beyond this movie, but there we go. We're into the main topic section of the night, which was your pitch tonight, influential show of the 90s. For those folks that are just joining us in the last half hour or so, go over the concept again, and then I'll start bringing up all of the shows that you had mentioned to me.
Sure. So, yeah, influential shows of the 90s. We're not just talking the hits. We're talking about the bombs too, or the bombs that, should have been hits or were going to be considered hits. And you had to have impacted the cultural zeitgeist in some way. So either you were a mega popular flashpoint like the Friends theme song breaking through on the radio just before the show got canceled, or you had to become like a cultural phenomenon like ER, where everybody was walking around going, "What's that show?" for a while, or you had to become a golden standard in terms of how TV shows were produced. So like The Sopranos. The Sopranos was the origin, or rather say the genesis for prestige TV. A prestige TV that was centered around an anti-hero. Star Trek: The Next Generation was probably the pinnacle, of 90s syndication, where all good things ended with more people watching it than regular network shows were praying to get at one point in time. So or you could be an epic failure like Cop Rock, an experiment so bad that they decided to never do it again. But oh my goodness, did they really want that show to be a hit?
So I went with your list. I didn't even contribute to this because you're going to have a much deeper knowledge of this than I will. So I'm just going to let you rip tonight. Your first show that you pitched.
So The Simpsons. What is there to say about The Simpsons that you can't already say? The Simpsons. So people kind of forget Fox was a brand new network in the mid '80s. It did not have many successful shows. As a matter of fact, the only two shows that were around from when it started were The Simpsons, and then later Married with Children. And The Simpsons started out as a short on the Tracy Ullman Show, and ultimately, what we get from The Simpsons is that. Excuse me, I'm being attacked by a bug. But essentially, the Simpsons builds the foundational blueprint for what goes on to become adult animation. It revolutionizes the Fox network TV empire, and goes on to become a merchandising juggernaut. And most shows really hadn't done that. If you were an adult animation, the Flintstones at this point was some 20 plus years earlier was still kind of the golden standard for adult television and animation.
The thing that astounds me about The Simpsons today is that it's still going, and the voice cast famously would kind of like to be done with it. they just keep getting paid.
It's one of those shows where I'm like, I don't know anybody who still actually watches The Simpsons. And we're getting a Simpsons movie too.
I actually really like the original Simpsons movie. That's one I'd kind of like to go back and rewatch. But man, we're talking. How old is it now? It's got to be in its not its 40s, but at least the upper 30s. It's got to be, right?
The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Got to be. Yeah, the Simpsons got to be pretty close to 40 at this point. Let's see. Let's see what season it is. Hold on, give me 1 second. Yeah, 1 second. Where's my Google? Where's my Google machine?
I think it's the longest running show of all time, if I remember right.
Yes.
Which is just crazy.
Season 37.
There you go. You're next.
Seinfeld. So the show about nothing. It ultimately redefined the sitcom TV structure, and kind of made it possible for. Uh, I think we're a little unfair to 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 the Seinfeld team by saying they're not good people. They're not great, but centering a show around a bunch of not always likable people, and then kind of watching them do not always likable things. At the end of the day, you don't get Curb Your Enthusiasm without Seinfeld.
I loved Seinfeld. I love practically all of the characters, but Newman especially I thought was hilarious. Anytime Kramer made one of his ridiculous entrances, George I thought was the funniest of the bunch. But the episode that always kills me is with Bookman. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Which one's Bookman?
The library cop.
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
I will watch that clip on loop because he's so good. And he made Jerry crack. It's like that's not easy to do. And he plays it. It's like, oh, what was the guy's name? Dragnet.
Oh, like Joe Friday.
Yes, he plays him just like Joe Friday. And he never ever breaks it. He is so serious, it's impossible not to laugh. So for that alone, I would have Seinfeld on this list.
Joe Bookman. Friends. So Friends becomes a cultural phenomenon overnight, and they can probably thank the Super Bowl for that. Friends was struggling when it first debuted. It was just not. It just was not resonating. As a matter of fact, oh God, what is her name? Rachel. What's Rachel's real name?
Jennifer Aniston.
Thank you. Jennifer Aniston was actually on two shows at the same time, one on CBS and one on NBC. They both had casting calls at the same time, and they both got picked up at the same time. And she was not willing to hedge her bets because she's like, there's no way this show's going to get picked up. And so she committed to working both shows until one was canceled. And they did the monkey humps everything episode at the end of the Super Bowl. And then like 3 weeks later, the theme song is a radio sensation. And all of a sudden, this cultural phenomenon happens where Friends becomes your peak hangout TV.
Yeah, and it's still got absolutely diehard fans. My favorite on this show was always Chandler.
Mhm.
I felt like Chandler was the closest to my sense of humor.
Mhm.
I think watching it now, it can grate a little bit because it became so ubiquitous. But at
Yes.
the time that it came out, it was absolutely just lightning, and totally understand why it became such a cultural phenomenon.
I do always have to ask, like, the how exactly did these people afford their apartments aside from Chandler? Chandler's the only person who we know could actually afford his apartment. Maybe Ross, but I don't. Like, you guys have penthouses in New York City, and Rachel was a clerk in Bloomingdale's, and Phoebe was being Ursula's probably homeless sister.
Actually, I think the way that Chandler could probably pay for all of them. He was working his weenus pretty hard.
The X-Files. So, Fox was. I'll give old school Fox this. Fox was always looking to experiment with its airwaves. They loved sci-fi content, but did not love to keep it on the air. And when the X-Files dropped, this was during a super experimental phase. I think it was first it was a Friday night show, and it was Mantis, Briscoe County Jr., and X-Files closed out the night. And then the show has a strong first season. Then Scully gets kidnapped in the second season, and it takes off like a shot, becomes the anchor for Sunday nights, and Fox realized that it could do serialized sci-fi. That was also a procedural hybrid, and we're 2 movies in, on Revival #2, still very much so loved, still very culturally relevant. And it had three spinoffs, three spinoffs, because there was a Lone Gunman, a Millennium, which got to wrap up on the X-Files, and then what was the other one? Oh gosh, I think it was about a guy who was really lucky. I can't remember the name of it. I'm gonna remember it at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I will text it to you. But it just I don't know, what there is that there's just so much to say about the X-Files.
I never got into it. I don't know why. It feels like it's something that should have been up my alley, but it never grabbed me. But the one fact that I know about it is that in the town where I live, second unit was here to shoot our local courthouse, posing as some government building in a completely different state.
Awesome.
So that's kind of interesting.
It stopped David Duchovny from being the guy from Red Shoe Diaries.
Right.
And then ER was pretty much the shining crown jewel, right? And NBC's Thursday night lineup for a really long time. What really kind of going back to the Cosby Show, NBC had a stranglehold on Thursday nights. Which again just paved the way and allowed them to experiment with a show like Friends. But ER was a fast-paced, realistic drama, and I think it had been a while, not counting Law and Order, which we'll talk about later, because Law and Order was a Friday night thing. To go back and do just this intense, realistic drama on primetime TV was kind of a risk for NBC, and it paid off. I don't remember how many seasons we get out of ER, but I think we got over 10.
And it was definitely a staple, and it foisted George Clooney on us.
Yeah.
I remember it was big when I was in high school. A lot of people were watching it. I was never into medical dramas, so I kind of missed out on this one. But
if you go back, it gives you River Song. The bad guy from RoboCop is a hateable doctor who gets an epic death. It's lots of careers. Most famous though is the launching of George Clooney, finally able to break the shackles of the facts of life. The Sopranos. So like I said, this is the birth of prestige TV on HBO, and probably starts the TV's anti-hero obsession. James Gandolfini was just so much charisma, so much presence, that he made you forget that you were rooting for like a despicable human. And then you get the rest of the cast who was just, everyone that you had ever seen on a Martin Scorsese movie was in this show, and they were all acting their butts off, and it was super compelling TV. One of the things I loved, especially the first season, was when my dad watched it. He was like, he was a little more critical when we got to season 2, but he was like, the people who wrote this show actually know how actually understand how these people work. And he said it was too realistic, which is why he was just super into it. And especially at this point in time, NYPD is locked into its very long feud with the with the crime families.
This was on HBO, wasn't it?
Yeah. Hmm.
This is another show that I never saw. There were a lot of shows on your list that I never actually watched, but I appreciate this one because I think without this we probably never would have gotten Deadwood.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. That we still haven't. I think that there's another show on here that if it didn't exist, we wouldn't get anything in terms of what we got from that gritty, from that gritty prestige era of TV that came out of HBO. But the listen, I laugh too because even the theme song, like everything about The Sopranos, it just you get something that comes along right at the same time, right at the right time, and everybody gloms onto it at the exact same time. Right there was, if you lived in New York, New Jersey, if you had your windows down, at some point in time, you were going to drive past some idiot blasting Sopranos theme song. It just it was unavoidable at that point in time.
Yeah, I'm having to put an explanation in the chat. Vamp for a little bit.
Okay. Let's see what else. I dropped off just because Sopranos started doing that thing that I hate that you see from modern TV where you start taking these super long breaks in between. I hate I I really have great umbrage with the British style of TV. Like just give me my stupid show. Or just tell me it's canceled and bring it back later. But I don't want to wait 3 years for season 2 and then act like you did me a favor because you gave me 3 2-hour episodes.
I understand your point there, but one thing I think I do like about British TV is shorter seasons because you don't get the filler that we get for a lot of stuff. They only tell as much of the story as they actually need to tell.
Yeah, I do think it works well for some things. Like I was a big fan of Luther. I just bloody love that show. I have not watched the movie on Netflix, but I love Luther. But there are other shows where I'm like, this could have been a little more. This should have gone a little bit longer. Or or you find out that hey, the show came out in 2012. How come it never wrapped up? Oh, season 2 starts soon. It's 2016. But I digress. I digress. The Sopranos again. It's there. It can't be undersold for its impact, especially for what it did for drama TV. I'd say without the Sopranos, you don't get the epic content that was coming out of FX for a little while. From The Shield to Justified to Sons of Anarchy. The Sopranos really laid the groundwork for that kind of TV. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This is stylized genre storytelling with some emotional depth. Joss Whedon has had, for better or for worse, Joss Whedon had a definitive impact on how you hear dialogue delivered on television today.
For better and for worse.
Yes, yes, because when Joss is doing it and he is at his best, the dialogue is compelling, it's engaging, it is sharp. And when it's someone who wants to be Joss light, it is grating, it is infantile, sometimes it's reductive. But when you do it right, it's very engaging. This show, I always go, yeah, it's the writing, it's also the actors. Sarah Michelle Gellar was a phenomenal lead. You kind of felt her angst as Buffy. Just this girl who wanted to have a normal life. And just just kind of watching her adventures. And again, we're talking about the WB. One of those a failed experiment between networks coming together to try to make a new network. And at the time it was the WB and UPN. And I want to say Buffy was definitely one of the bigger hits on the WB, along with what was it? A Felicity. That the Felicity which gave us J.J. Abrams.
Bad to worse.
Beverly Hills 90210. So you could probably do like 4 shows worth of content on Aaron Spelling and everything that he gave us. But Beverly Hills 90210, it became I guess, for a lack of better explanation, this is the seedier version of Saved by the Bell. And it became the teen drama blueprint up to and including the teen reality show blueprint. If you go back and you I had on my Roku the other day, and I saw they were doing a special for a Laguna Beach reunion, and I'm like, all that stuff is rooted in the storytelling that you got from 90210. Just a bunch of rich, spoiled kids living a rich, privileged life. It's glamorous and also over the top ridiculous, and all your alleged 16 and 17-year-olds look like they're all 29. Married to Children today is one of my favorite shows. I think Married to Children was the third or second. It was the third or second show that debuted when Fox the channel debuted. And its first season. Well, so the premise of the show is we want to show a slightly a slightly less than a working class family that just does not have the love and affection for each other that the Cosbys have. As a matter of fact, when the show was first pitched, it was pitched as not the Cosbys. They wanted to do something that was the antithesis of what you got out of the Huxtables, and they really struggled to find the right cast. And then Ed O'Neill came, and it's kind of all she wrote. And then it was just like this shocking, raunchy show that you almost felt a little naughty watching it. And then it kind of, and I laugh because Married with Children proved that cancel culture can be defeated because a couple women get together and they start writing a letter writing campaign. They get a bunch of sponsors pulled, but in response, because people started making so much noise about it, it becomes a mega hit. It becomes a mega hit and carries Fox out until it's unceremoniously canceled in '98, but it carries Fox throughout the entirety pretty much of the '90s. And it gave the world Christina Applegate, and showed you what Ed O'Neill could really do, and Katie Seagal, sister of the Doublemint twins.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah. She is the non-twin sister of the Doublemint twins.
Huh. Well, that's neat.
Twin Peaks. So,
Which was this the 90s?
I think when it debuted, I think it debuted in '90.
Okay.
I think it debuted in '90, so it just makes it. But Twin Peaks is just one of those shows where, like, not a lot of people watched it, but a lot of people talked about it. and I don't think people really understood how to process the show. And
Well, that was sort of deliberate.
yes, absolutely. And it was. I think even now with the with the revival, people still kind of struggle with it. But it was fascinating. I mean, this is surreal storytelling. It's almost the it's like proto prestige mystery. It's like because it's just it requires a lot more thought and a lot more focus than what you were getting out of TV at that time, and really probably should have been a couple different movies instead of being on ABC. But kudos to ABC for being willing to experiment with it. And I remember there was I can't remember what episode it was, but there was a clip of a girl standing in a red room that gave me nightmares when I was 7.
My dad watched this show, and I remember sitting there trying to watch it, and I hated shows that dealt with things like it was too surreal. It's one of those things where it's like at a certain point you stop being surreal and you start becoming pretentious. And I always got that vibe off of it. It's like, Lynch, you're just being a pretentious word I can't say here right now. It's like I never liked it, but I know it definitely it impacted the zeitgeist at the time, but I just thought, man, what a jerk you are.
I love the theme song though. So yes, I know it debuts in the 80s, but TNG does not take off until the 90s. As a matter of fact, I think when you get to the best of both worlds, TNG is at the height of its power. It is a cultural staple. It's not this struggling show on syndication. It is Star Trek: The Next Generation, and it is now starting to impact the cultural zeitgeist. And now it's now when you talk about Star Trek, you're not just talking about Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. You're talking about Captain Picard. The and Star Trek: The Next Generation becomes the sci-fi blueprint for essentially everything that comes after. It doesn't matter if they try to make it a little gritty, like the Stargate reboot. I'm sorry, the Battlestar Galactica reboot, or they go a little silly like Lex. It's when you look at how these shows kind of break down, it's it follows the TNG blueprint, up to and including the Orville, which is just in itself a wonderful love letter to everything that was great about TNG. But the when all good things finally when all good things ends and the ratings and I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was a massive success. It just really it defined what syndication uh, could be with the right content.
I felt like the Next Generation had been falling off a little in the last two seasons because it also, I felt, got a little bit pretentious.
Mhm.
It started believing a little too much in its utopian society, I thought. But that's what made Deep Space Nine such a great contrast to it.
Yeah,
And I think one of the greatest achievements of the Next Generation was just the casting. They got the casting for the show
yeah.
completely correct.
I have well, he passed away, but a good friend, his uncle, or may have been a cousin. I don't remember exactly how the lineage worked, but he was an analyst. He was an analyst for the U.S. government. I remember we're sitting around the kitchen, and we're like, we're well into Bush era, and he starts asking, well, what are your thoughts on George W. So he lets everybody say their part, and he never gives his opinion. He thought it was interesting, and then he immediately follows up with, well, "What's your favorite Star Trek?" And I, at the time, was the only one who said DS9. And he went, fascinating. Why is it DS9? And then at that time, I was just intrigued by the geopolitics of it all. And he was like, I think what you'll really like is, and it's like, and it's they didn't know that, they didn't realize it at the time, but he said Deep Space Nine is actually truest to how we actually have to handle things in the world. He's like, this is it. He's like, it isn't Next Generation where everything is neat and pretty. It is all shades of gray, and sometimes your friends are your friends, and sometimes your friends are your biggest problem, and sometimes your enemies, well, they're your enemies, but they might not be that bad today. He's like, he's like he's like, the thing we love about Star Trek DS9 is that it gets the real world right.
The storytelling, it's like I was less into the stuff with Kai Wynn and Cisco and all of that. Anytime you had a story with Bashir and Garrick and Gul Dukat,
Mm-hmm.
I would love those episodes. And a lot of it is because of that very reason. The idea of Cardassian politics and their relationship with the Bajorans always was fascinating to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's something that we lack a little bit with Star Trek today, is they've gotten away from some of that stuff.
Uh, so,
Oh,
oh no. So, Fresh Prince of Bel Air. So this was this. So it's primetime comedy with real world themes, and it was not originally intended for Will Smith. So this show was part of a two-show deal with rappers Kid and Play, and at first it was for an animated show, and then it was for a prime time a prime time sitcom. And they were not happy with how the animated series was working out for them, and they decided to do a little power play and tried to hold a production on the sitcom. So they got fired and said, "You guys are not the only rappers out there in existence. There's there's a kid out there who's got a higher social cue than you guys. We're gonna take our shot with him." And they sent them packing. And which is why when you get to the first few episodes of The Fresh Prince of Bel Air, although DJ Jazzy Jeff was featured prominently in the early Will Smith albums, the show was always intended to be about two friends, not two friends and the irritating cousin. So they reworked a little bit to get to get Jazz in there, but yeah, if it was not for Kid and Play being a little too big for their britches, the world may not have gotten megastar Will Smith.
what a strange arc for a career too, because there was a time when he was the biggest thing going, and he had hit after hit after hit. And yet, for the last decade or decade and a half, it's been nothing but a disaster.
I say it's really fascinating. Eric blames it all on Jada Pinkett, and to Eric's credit, Eric has hated Jada Pinkett the moment she popped up on A Different World. He was like, I don't like her. I don't know what it is about her, but she's going to be a problem. the and I think it's fascinating. It's he turns down Wild Wild West or rather he does Wild Wild West instead of doing The Matrix because he doesn't get it, and then he turns down Django Unchained because he didn't get it. And although I do think ultimately Jamie Foxx was the better choice, Quentin wanted Will Smith, and it is a head scratcher.
I
As to
could
how you look at this movie, go, I have questions.
I could not imagine Will Smith delivering the line, "The D is silent."
Yes.
At least not the way that Jamie Foxx did it. The way Jamie Foxx did it, it was cool.
It's also it kind of makes you feel like, hey, Will Smith actually used to be pretty funny too. Now he's
He
just
He
You
was
know?
a good actor, but now he's just sad and
Yeah.
pathetic, and
Yeah.
I think it's just because the man doesn't have a spine.
No, no, no. He is. Yeah, yeah. I don't know if we can say the word on this channel, but yeah, she definitely ruined his life, and does so with glee every chance she gets. South Park. So you know, in spite of where they may be today, South Park was shocking. It was shocking. It was just like satire to a whole new level. They pop culture references, um, just unafraid to tackle the news story of the day, and it came out at such speed that the news story of the day was still relevant by the time they tackled it. I mean, it was unheard of, and it was just I don't to me it's quintessential late 90s. Like I would kind of joke, I go like, I don't know, something about the 90s was like kind of like America's angsty teens. Like it's like all of a sudden now you can swear on TV. So now you're pushing your boundaries. You're saying the B word. You're saying the A word every chance you get. And all of a sudden, if you're up late enough, you can see side boob. And people just lost their minds. And then it all culminates into Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson having one of the worst halftime show presentations of all time. And then everybody goes, all right, maybe it's time for us to take a take a little breather and kind of reset where we're going here. Dude, Law and Order. This is the king, Dick Wolf. This is the king of the procedural format. This was part courtroom procedure, part cop procedure. It is a franchise machine. The hit after hit after hit after hit, up to and including now the Chicago style shows with Chicago PD, Chicago Fire, and Chicago Med. These shows all kind of overlap now too. Yeah, it's fascinating because I don't think people realize just how many shows Dick Wolf produced, and some of them are pretty cool. Like I was a fan of New York Undercover on Fox, but then he had some stinkers. Oh my goodness, and he had some absolute stinkers. But you don't get any of that without Law and Order, and just the incredible performances that the actors cast in the show gave you. And again, the fact that it is still, I think Law and Order proper is back on TV after a brief hiatus. But the SVU is, ah, goodness, what season? Let me see what season of SVU we're on. The Hold on. What season? Nope. I didn't say DCU. I
That would be a much different show.
said, yeah, right.
That would be Gotham Central.
Wow, 27. So SVU, the one of the younger spin-offs, it's on its 27th season. So I think this again, this is just this redefined the cop show. It's absolutely incredible. It's just there's just no end to what it's given us. The real world. So, you know, before reality TV, MTV, the music channel, decided that it wanted to do an experiment, and it wanted to follow modern American youths in certain cities, and it put them all together in an apartment, and it chronicled their lives for a year. And I think the first cast was New York. They did L.A. and then I don't remember what was after that. And then and some people had varying degrees of success. I think probably one of the most famous ones is Mike Mizanin going on to be the Miz in wrestling. But when the Real World debuted, it was a big freaking deal for a lot of people, and people were really attached to the lives of just these ordinary people, just trying to get jobs and function in a space. And because it was so new, it didn't have a lot of it didn't have a lot of the I guess the premeditated gobbledygook that gets jammed into these shows now. This was authentic. This was authentic TV, and it was game changing. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers kind of redefines kids TV on its way to being a merchandising powerhouse. This is the blueprint on how to do a lot with as little as possible. I'm just gonna cut together content from a show that's probably 10 years old, and I'm gonna get a couple of kids. I'm not even gonna pay them scale, and if they have the audacity to even so much as ask for a nickel, I'm gonna fire them, and no one's gonna say a word because your kid is playing with my toys. And this show ran, from 92 up until just a couple of years ago. And Power Rangers is awesome. Doing karate, fighting monsters in cool costumes, and you shoot lasers at things, and you jump into Voltron robots, and sometimes they're dinosaurs, and sometimes they're cars, and sometimes they're animals. I don't really know what else you could ask for. And the best part is, as you watch the show, as it goes on, you start seeing actors you see on TV, and I'm like, oh wow, that guy was a Red Ranger. That person was a Yellow Ranger. Or it's like that bad guy. That bad guy was the SPD Red Ranger. Or you get big time actors like Vernon Wells playing the villain. So it's really, especially during the Hawaii years. I'm pretty sure Tamar Morrison pops up for 5 minutes. Baywatch. This is the high king of syndication. This is everybody and their mother watched this show that everybody loved to make fun of. But Baywatch launched more careers, and was watched by so many people. So Pamela Anderson,
Plastic surgeons.
Yes. Pamela Anderson to Jason Momoa. Home Improvement. This turned Tim Allen into a household name. It's a blue-collar sitcom about a family man doing man stuff. It made grunting in public cool. It was just a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It's Tim. I think Tim Allen does not get the credit that he should for the amount of charisma that he has, because he plays very likable, down-to-earth characters, but not always in the most likable ways. Especially now that he's gotten a little older and he is unafraid to be conservative. But he's always, he is very fair with his content. There's always a balance. There's always a mirror. And he doesn't have a problem leaning into certain tropes. And it's just always fun and it's always endearing. Like I think the show, I don't know if it's still on, but the show that he has with Kat Dennings, is that her name? Kat Dennings, I can't think now.
Dennings, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I think they play well off of each other, and he is fiercely loyal to people who have been on shows with him. There's always there's always nods to Home Improvement, and then the one that was on in between, which I can't think of its name, where where he had all the daughters and he was a shop owner. So it's just but you don't get that without Home Improvement, and this was a ratings juggernaut for a long time. I think one of the few things that was a threat to The Simpsons, before The Simpsons went to Sundays, or went back to Sundays, because The Simpsons was on Thursdays for a little while. The Home Improvement was just was just powerful TV. And Frasier, the golden standard. It's highbrow. It's a highbrow sitcom, and redefines what your expectations of a spinoff should be, to the point that I think people do kind of sometimes forget that Frasier is a spinoff, of Cheers. I always laugh. I had a friend who would get so mad because Frasier is one of the smartest shows on TV, and he always gets so mad. He's like, "We're talking about a sitcom. Who cares? I don't care. I'm not stupid because I don't watch it." It's like, but I love Frasier. What an incredible cast! I didn't even say this. I watched the Paramount Plus reboot, and I wish it was on regular TV because it would still be on. They did a phenomenal job of finding a kid who could be his son, who had the ability to kind of tap into Frasier's arrogance, but also gave you the ability to invoke like everything that you loved about Martin Crane, and just and anytime Lilith pops up, it's phenomenal. I think Paramount did us a great disservice by ending the show early to save some money. Cop Rock. So, for those who don't know, Cop Rock is a musical police procedural where all dialogue is sung, and I think at the time, to songs that were that were in pop culture. So, it was like Hill Street Blues, but for theater nerds. And they wanted this show to be a hit so bad. So bad. I'm pretty sure like it got canceled 3 times before it was finally actually dead. And then everything made fun of it. Everything made fun of Cop Rock. Like every comedian, every TV, Living Color, Saturday Night Live, everything made fun of Cop Rock. I'll give them credit, because it is infamous, but it does also show that there are limits to experimentation. Roseanne, grounded working class family just trying to survive. John Goodman and Roseanne Barr just had just undeniable charisma. The kids were phenomenal. Even when the show kind of got a little weird at the end because of because John Goodman wanted to kind of do other things, and just weird fights over creative control. The revival was astonishing, and kind of showed you what could happen with the right creatives, behind these things. And it's criminal what they did there, But at the end of the day, Roseanne, Roseanne was an amazing show.
I did see in the chat that there are some people saying, do these really belong on this list? I want to underscore this is supposed to be influential shows. It doesn't necessarily mean good shows. But they did have an impact on TV at the time and going forward. So that's
Yeah.
where these are coming from.
Well, listen, without Roseanne, you don't get Reba. I think what was the Brett Butler show? Grace Under Fire.
Yeah.
Roseanne, like it just the power of having a female lead who was also a comic, kind of living her blue collar life. It resonated that even her own network tried to ape the success of the show just across the board. And again, and Roseanne dealt with some pretty hefty,
weighty topics. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah. So again, it's again, it's like I said at the very beginning. You don't have to be good; you just have to be influential. Saturday Night 90's SNL. It was a comedy pipeline. It was a pipeline to some of the biggest stars. Mike Myers, Dana Carvey, Rob Schneider. Yeah, like it just
Norm Macdonald.
It had its peaks and valleys, but when Saturday Night Live in the 90's was at its peak, it was water cooler. It was water cooler TV. The Fumbalaya, Fumbaruski, all that stuff. The head bobbing guys. Matthew Gallagher sniffing their fingers under the armpits. It was a movie pipeline. If a segment hit, you're pretty much guaranteed it was going to get a movie. Dr. Evil is Lorne Michaels. Although there's some strife there because Dana Carvey does feel very slighted because Dr. Evil is Dana Carvey's impression of Lorne Michaels, and he never felt like Mike Myers gave him the appropriate credit for that. But without it, we don't get it just. Comedy would be very different without that era of SNL. And you don't get Celebrity Jeopardy alone between Sean Connery and Burt Reynolds. There is no, depending on depends on how you feel about it, but there is no Anchorman. There is no Anchorman. There is no Elf. There's no Talladega Nights without Saturday Night Live. There is no Austin Powers without Saturday Night Live. It was absurdly influential at that point in time. Oz. So for those who don't know, Oz is HBO's first real drama. This is the show that paves that carves out the foundation for shows like The Sopranos. It is set in a maximum security prison, and you watch the lives of these inmates play out. And it is gritty. It is visceral. There's lots of man butt, and terrible men doing things to men that no man should ever want to see. And it had an awesome opening credits song. But the Ernie Hudson played a grizzled prison veteran, and this is oh my God, why can't I think of names? Oh, it's because it's 1:00 in the morning. Oh my God, he plays J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, that's exactly. This is like your first real exposure to him as an actor. And he plays a not good man who does really just awful things and runs the Brotherhood.
J.K. Simmons.
Yes, J.K. Simmons, and just yes, you're as so. Just remember, you're watching this nice man, tell you that we are farmers, dum 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 dum, and he was out there burning iconography onto people's chests and taking hostages and just doing really awful things for a few seasons. And it was gritty, it was visceral, and without it, you do not get HBO being willing to give you shows like Rome and Deadwood and The Sopranos. Dawson's Creek. Do 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 do. This was I think one of the most unique things about Dawson's Creek was that it was dialogue driven. It was a dialogue driven teen drama. These kids did not shut the hell up. The they and that was very unusual, especially for teen shows, because 90210 was not exactly known for its substance, but Dawson's Creek kind of went like its intellectual opposite. The emotion of the storylines were a little more grounded, still oftentimes very ridiculous, but a little more grounded and just very, very dialogue heavy. And Beavis and Butthead. This is kind of the epitome of MTV youth counterculture. It solidified MTV's 90's identity. Is that everything? Wow.
Yep, that was the last in your list. There's one that I thought of as we were in the middle of your list that I'd like to put up as an honorable mention. We didn't talk about NYPD Blue, which I thought was a great show and incredibly influential when it came to cop shows at the time as well. So anyway, there's many more that we could have talked about. I see all of you guys throwing your own choices out into the chat. Believe me, there was a lot of TV in the 90's, and that was just what we covered in this segment. So I do want to get to some of your lists because you did send some in.
Okay, it was painstaking to whittle this down to 25.
We did have from SFX Sabretooth Raptor for 10. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Family Matters, although I think that was 80s, wasn't it?
Oh, the Ninja Turtles TV show? Oh, well, you can talk about Ninja Turtles because towards the end of its run, in order to try to compete with Batman, the animated series, and the X-Men, they call it the Dark Years, where they fire the voice actress who played April O'Neil and had been from day one. And then they start using dark paper, which they started doing on Spawn. So they thought that making the show dark and gritty was going to save it, and it's just this weird little thing that everybody kind of rejects. And then at the very last second, before they wrap it all up, they put the show back to normal, and then it goes on its hiatus until the early 2000s.
So we had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Family Matters, Full House, Home Improvement, DuckTales, X-Files, etc. Great decade of TV of the 90's. Wish we could go back. Sorry, got to get off to an early start, so bye for now. Next up, we got Barry the Music Man for 5, saying Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Babylon 5, X-Files, Farscape, Lex, The Flash, Highlander, Stargate SG-1, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and Angel and the Stand miniseries.
I had the Stand on there. And I was like, but we could probably spend an entire just half an episode talking about that. The other thing that I do miss is that I did love the that little run there of of ABC doing the Stephen King miniseries. The Stand, they killed it with The Stand. Obviously, It. I think they did. Oh gosh, what was it? I really enjoyed what they did for The Shining. They the little more faithful to the book version of The Shining. And there was one other one that they did that I'm totally brain farting on. But these are all great choices.
We got Ritasaurus for 5 saying, does Jerry Springer count as an influential 90s show? After all, you can't talk about the 90s without him. It was pure car crash TV, and it was fun.
Absolutely, dude. You have to. First of all, that Jerry Springer, right? Because Morton Downey Jr. walked so Jerry Springer could run. At the end of the day, but that Jerry Springer was the epitome of just trash TV, and it landed at the right moment. So I have a friend who a professional wrestler. His name is Crazy Ivan. Crazy Ivan in real life is Puerto Rican. He has one of the most Puerto Rican names on the planet. But he played a skinhead. He used to run around in a gas mask, bald head. And so the Springer Show calls, and they're doing an episode about white supremacists. And they're like, and he's like, we're gonna fly to Chicago, and we're gonna give you $300. He's like, a free plane ticket to Chicago and $300, and I get to stay in a Marriott. Sign me up. So he goes, and he's like, I'm surrounded by all these guys, these Klanmen, these skinheads, and they just don't know. They just don't know. And so he goes, and he's like, he's in the green room. This guy walks up. This is my dog. I can't remember the name of the douche chilling name that the guy gave the dog. But he goes, like, this is a good boy. He hates this particular slur and this particular slur. So Ivan leans in and gives the dog a great big old kiss and tells him that he's a good boy because Ivan is the second slur that was listed, and the guy does not know this. And then before they're about to go live, they tell the Klansmen that they have to go out there and they have to take their hoods off. And so all of a sudden there's panic, and they don't want to do it. And Ivan goes, can I get a little extra money? And they go, how's an extra $200? I'll put your hood on, sir, and I'll do everything you need me to do. Sure enough, there is Ivan, march around on that stage, screaming WP, WP the entire time with his romper stompers. And then and just fast forward, sure enough, super old Puerto Rican, Mr. Sanchez, getting a $600 payday from the Jerry Springer Show, laughing at everybody for being goofs. But the Springer Show, like, do you remember the first time you saw a Jerry Springer Show fist fight? It was unheard of. Now, I did say Ricky Lake started it all, up to and including the paternity test. But you know, coming home early from school, having a half day from school, was a race to get to see the Jerry Springer Show, depending on where he was syndicated. And then, of course, we got that awful movie that we discussed on this show. And it just, yeah.
Ringmaster?
Yes, Ringmaster. So, yeah, Jerry Springer does count. It was influential.
Toast the Host 23 for 10. Last Man Standing with Tim Allen was good. Molly Ephraim, who played Mandy, was the best part of the show. Even though she's a liberal, once she left and replaced by another actress, the show wasn't the same. And then we've got Sean, formerly artist known as John, for $1.99. No Thunder in Paradise? It's the WDW Pro Show, Kevin.
Elston, I love Thunder in Paradise, but Thunder in Paradise was not influential. I love the fact that Hulk Hogan drove around in a bootleg submarine kit and fought a Temu Predator. And then there's an episode where he fights Vader and Ric Flair on a beach. It's all amazing. It's all great. It's all awesome. But it is in no way influential. If anything, it is a warning about casting and standards.
All right, guys, that was the last of our super chats, and that's the show for us tonight. Kevin, do you have anything to pitch before we bow out?
I don't know. I have a YouTube channel. I'll get back to putting some stuff up there soon. I just was so busy. But I appreciate everybody almost getting me to 500 before I had to take an unexpected sabbatical. But when we return, we will return stronger than ever before.
And I think that we should be on the M4 Empire show tomorrow night with Marv. And then we'll have our, is that tomorrow night? No, it's on Thursday. I'm missing my date again. And then Friday we'll be back for the Cinema of 1983. So be sure to join us there for that. We're going to bow out for the night. Until then, we'll see you again soon.
The bell rings every morning. It's off to school and work. Waiting for some fun while my boss acts like a jerk. Pro show afternoons. Midnight's edge can't come too soon. The afternoon's edge can't come too soon. But at night I'm filled with dread. I know just what I'll do instead. Come on and follow me. It's time you see for Lorn and Apollo. Time to laugh and learn. Come feel the burn of what the fandom was. What random fun doesn't escape? Isn't it great? Late night with Lorn and Apollo.